Yahoo Sports Fantasy Football Live is presented by Popeyes and powered by Ram Trucks.
We have saved the best for last. One more time, it's Week 17. Fantasy Championships are on the line. We're here to get your lineups ready for that all-important final matchup. Jason Fitz, Andy Behrens, Matt Harmon, and we dive straight in. Usually we just sit here, we have a little dance, we get to, just shoot the you-know-what with each other. But no, gentlemen, we have breaking news. We're going to get all the way into Thursday Night Football, and we have to start right away with massive news that will impact everybody. Instead of having all sorts of fun, you guys can get in on the fun later. Hashtag AskFFL. I want to get right to the preview because the inactive is the biggest story we've seen today. It's the biggest story of the weekend. Could be the biggest story of the year. Amari Cooper is inactive for the Cleveland Browns. Zach Wilson also inactive. Dustin Hopkins, a little love for you there, Andy. We got a little kicker in for you. Who knew we could do that? We got that in. But let's start with the most significant here. Usually, as much as we love to have fun, this is massive because Amari Cooper is such a huge part of this offense. Matt Harmon, when I say Amari Cooper inactive, you say...
For the Cleveland Browns offense, I've said this a lot over the last 2 years, and I really mean it. I think Amari Cooper has had a great career. He's had some really nice moments in Oakland. He had some great moments in Dallas, but I think he has played the best football of his career in a Cleveland Browns uniform. I mean, this guy has been electric in the hardest role to play in an NFL offense. He's been a big boy X receiver for the Cleveland Browns, and he's been getting great separation and beating press coverage and winning on the sideline, doing all these things he did in splashes, but not consistently in his prior stops. He's been doing it in Cleveland, and he just didn't have a quarterback to hit him consistently. And finally, he had a guy in Joe Flacco. He's been getting all this volume. He had a record-setting performance last week. He's been winning you his fantasy championship, and for it to stop here in Week 17, it's a brutal blow for fantasy managers, but honestly, more importantly, it's a brutal blow for a Cleveland Browns offense that has suddenly turned into one of the most fun units to watch in the NFL.
Well, in the Browns offense, Andy Behrens still has a ton to play for. Let's be real. The Browns, with their playoff position, this is what you hope to have at the end for your fantasy championship. You want to have guys that are not only great, but they're also engaged because they have to put meaningful football left to play. The Browns are exactly that. They're going to have to figure out what to do without Amari. Fantasy owners are going to have to figure out what that means for all the other weapons on the offense. Like, this just feels like it sends Thursday night into a bit of a tailspin if you've got a roster loaded with Thursday night guys.
Yeah, one of the toughest situations here, of course, is Joe Flacco, who has been weirdly carrying you, right? He's on this legendary 4-game run, and now he's at the center of this great revenge game narrative too. So we have this incredible convergence here. Guy signs with the Browns 6 weeks ago, takes over as the starter in December, and is averaging 327 passing yards per game. He has been the whole show. He's attempted at least 42 passes in each of his 4 games. If it wasn't for all the interceptions, that's kind of made it messy. We could favorably compare this to Flacco's other pretty decent 4-game stretch when he detonated during the playoffs in 2012 and beat Peyton Manning and Tom Brady in back-to-back weeks, won a Super Bowl. The Jets defense, though, this is the toughest test that he's faced this year by far. This is the league's number 2 pass defense. They haven't actually allowed a 300-yard passer yet this season. I was still fully prepared to endorse Flacco despite the matchup, but the Amari Cooper thing is this is kind of the death blow if you have been planning on starting him in fantasy. Yes, he has Njoku. Yes, he has Elijah Moore. I just don't think I could go there against this defense with the weapon downgrade.
So let's reset this entire thing. We're going to take you all the way up to Thursday Night Football. For anyone that doesn't know, we jumped right into the news, but we've got a matchup tonight that's the Jets taking on the Cleveland Browns. The Jets, we know this season's been an abject disaster. We know that the Browns are sitting here in playoff contention. The Cleveland Browns favored by 7. Over-under on this one, 34.5. Not sure if that's going to be impacted by Amari Cooper, so keep an eye on the lines as they may be shifting last second. In the meantime, again, we'll tell everybody who's active and inactive here because Amari Cooper is inactive. Zach Wilson's inactive. We know that coming in. So let's take a look at some of the players to watch. Andy Behrens, you were just talking about one of them. Who's on your mind tonight that you'll be watching now?
Oh, well, it is certainly still Flacco. Absolutely, no question about it. We can be interested in some of the other pieces in this game, but there's not, like, with Amari Cooper down, there's not a ton else on the Cleveland side. They've got some pretty frisky running backs. That's been fine. You can run a little bit against the Jets, but for the most part, this is still Flacco and how he responds. Because again, they've built this entire offense around him over the last 4 weeks, which is wild. He just showed up. But again, 320 plus passing yards per week, and he's putting the ball in the air 40 plus times each week. I am interested to see where the targets go. I mean, obviously Amari Cooper had been the centerpiece of the receiving core. Elijah Moore's had some moments this year, though, and David Njoku is finishing this season like a guy that we're probably going to put in the top 4, maybe top 5 at the position next season. So I am definitely interested in seeing where this week's 42 or 44 pass attempts go.
Well, and that brings me to somebody I've got my eye on. You just mentioned him, and it's David Njoku. Now, I already was high on Njoku before the Amari situation, but this only increases that. When you look at the production he's had, particularly over the last 3 games, the number of touchdowns has been pretty staggering. He's become such a clutch weapon for Joe Flacco. You're looking at 9 targets last week, 14 targets the week before. He hasn't seen less than 8 targets. He's seen less than 8 targets one time in the last 2 months. So when you start talking about the weapon that he's become for Flacco, I think the news that we have now that Amari Cooper is inactive means that Njoku's going to get an even heavier lift out of this game, which will bring me to something that I've got my eye on later. But in the meantime, Matt Harmon, give us somebody you've got your eye on now with this news of Amari in this game.
Yeah, of course, we're all talking about the Joe Flacco revenge game aspect of this. Like, why didn't I get that call from the Jets after Aaron Rodgers went down so quickly in week 1? But there is another revenge game at play here. Andy mentioned Elijah Moore, former Jets receiver, was obviously traded to the Cleveland Browns after a falling out that, you know, if we're all being honest here, kind of Elijah Moore's fault. I mean, to be honest here, like, you can't go on social media and complain about your role when your team's winning games. All right, you can do that stuff behind doors, but you can't whine about it on Twitter. Regardless, what happened. We also know that what happened last time Amari Cooper left a game, it was in that Rams Week 13 game, Joe Flacco's first start. These two guys who have history together were absolutely on fire. Elijah Moore had 12 targets. He was targeted on 33% of his routes. He had a ton of air yards in that game. Flacco was really the first quarterback in a while that really let it rip to Elijah Moore downfield. We didn't see a lot of that with the other guys in Cleveland. So I don't think you need to be so desperate as to play Elijah Moore in fantasy, but maybe like a prop bet type of situation, something to keep your eye on if he can lead the situation here with Amari Cooper. I actually, just not to hijack the show here for a second, but Andy, because you're a smart guy, hypothetically, if there are any people out there watching that were thinking about streaming Joe Flacco in their fantasy championship here, are you pulling Flacco out entirely? Are you streaming guys like Derek Carr? Like, I mean, are you going to Tyrod Taylor? Like, how desperate are we talking here if you were planning on starting Flacco tonight?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. It's probably the essential question. Yes, I guess is the quick answer. I'm probably pulling him out of lineups. I would put Derek Carr ahead of him. Carr's got a great matchup this week against Tampa. I would have already had Baker Mayfield ahead of him, but like, he's put himself in this conversation where it's close, and we have to consider Flacco even in a tough matchup as, like, you know, QB 12 to 15 material. I've got him buried now. I put him at QB 22. I wouldn't plug in just anyone. I'm not putting in like Jaron Hall ahead of him. I'm not putting in sort of the real dregs here. I'm not putting in Trevor Siemian ahead of him, but I would have Derek Carr for sure. Carr was probably the best of this week's free agent ads who can actually come through with top 10, top 12 numbers.
Okay, I'm gonna push back on that a little bit. The only thing I'd say is that this Jets defense is no more by reputation than it is from how it's actually playing. Look over the last few weeks. I mean, they gave up 28 points to the Commanders. They gave up 30 points to the Dolphins. Like, I just don't think, I understand that they're the Jets defense, but you've got a team that's playing for nothing, that's mailing it in at this point, that's all controversy, that, you know, their coach is saying he's going to be back. Everybody says it's fine, but I feel like one team is thinking about their trip to Mexico and their golf clubs, and the other team's fighting for a play. I think you guys are overreacting. How do you like that, Andy Behrens? I'm pushing back on it. We're all there. There's a fight now. Harmon has created our first fight at the last week of the season.
It's the essence of my job is to overreact. That's what I do. I've been professionally overreacting for 20 years. Of course I'm going to do it right now when we're talking about Joe Flacco. But really, like, you think about the total in this game, 34.5 and probably going down. It's just not a rich game environment.
Yeah, you're probably right. All right, speaking of props, let's bring in the noise, bring in the props, make a little bit of cash for everybody. Matt Harmon, this is your chance to go out there and tell the world something you've got your eye on. What do you think, good sir? Nothing influenced, of course, by your own fantasy situation.
No, absolutely not. I would never do that in a professional way on this show or any other show we do. It's not about us. It's about you, the people. And I think you, the people, should be very interested in the over on Breece Hall catches at 4.5. I mean, incredible target concentration from Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall last week against the Commanders. I mean, that was basically all they threw to. You know, Tyler Conklin, he had a cute little 14% target share. Otherwise, it was all Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson. Breece Hall right now, again, just from a receiving standpoint, he is tied with Alvin Kamara for the most targets among running backs with 84. He is tied, weirdly, with Christian McCaffrey for the most receiving yards among running backs with 537. I mean, he's a critical piece of their passing game. Let's get him 5 catches. He had in the last 5 games here, he has 9, 8, 9, 2. I don't want to talk about that one. And 16 targets. So I think we can get him to 5 catches against the Cleveland Browns here.
Again, no selfish need for that at all. It's important to really stress the professionalism. Andy Behrens, what do you have on this one?
Yeah, well, first of all, this game is just crying out for me to take a kicker prop, but I'm not going to do it. I understand it's the finale of the season. You guys don't want to hear about it, so I'm not going to do it. I'm going to piggyback on something that Harmon said, and I'm going to take Garrett Wilson over 47.5 receiving yards. He's coming off a 15-target game. Like Trevor Siemian last week, for all of his flaws, he basically, I don't know, he played that game like he was a fantasy manager, right? He funneled targets to the 2 best players on his team. Garrett Wilson has actually hit this number 11 different times this season. He's on his way to another 1,000+ yards. He's only 42 yards shy of 1,000+ yards. So if they care at all about getting him there, he's going to hit this number tonight. Wilson had 9 catches last week. He's just, again, peppered with targets. Cleveland's defense, while great, has still allowed 16 different wide receivers to reach this total. So even in a bad game, even in a game without points, Garrett Wilson can do this.
Okay, I like that. I'll give you one that I've got my eye on, and I'll be transparent with the world. I had an Amari Cooper prop in here, and then all of a sudden he's inactive, right? So you start looking around and saying, well, what does that mean? I'm going to go back to Njoku and what I like here. Again, I mentioned the targets already, but look at the yardage here. I found this number, 61.5 receiving yards at plus 135. Now, 61.5 is a little rich. It's a little aggressive. He has hit that 2 of the last 3 games. And in the last game, he had 6 catches for 44 yards on 9 targets on a game where Amari was still going off. So he even got fed while it was less than 61.5 on a game where they didn't really have to feed him. I use that logic to think about the fact that in this situation, the one thing that they're going to be able to rely on in my mind is going to be Njoku to be able to get some things done. And I don't trust a defense to run down plays when they have nothing to play for. I genuinely, if you haven't caught this theme yet, I think the Jets are going to be mailing this one in. I think that they're going to get beat and beat bad in this football game, and that's going to get opportunities for big plays for the Browns. I'm feeling froggy tonight. I got Week 17 predictions coming. They're going to be in my menchies if I'm wrong. All right, let's take a look now at our fantasy game changers for this week, powered by Ram Trucks. You know what we do. It's like secret password. We give you a word that we associate with Ram Trucks and then a player that we associate with the same word. Andy, your word, trustworthy.
Oh, yeah. Matthew Stafford has been trustworthy all season, and particularly over these last 5 weeks when he's thrown 14 touchdown passes and just 1 interception. He's had multiple touchdown games against some of the league's elite defenses, too, including 3 each against Baltimore and Cleveland in back-to-back games. Every week, this guy is making a wow throw or 2 or 3 that is just not in the arsenal of most NFL quarterbacks. So the arm strength here is very much still alive. Cooper Kupp is back to being Cooper Kupp. Puka Nacua has been ridiculous, and the matchup ahead against the Giants is nothing to fear. Again, Stafford has cooked the Ravens and the Browns already this season, and he's done it recently, so he can definitely handle New York's defense here. I like him as an exceedingly trustworthy, probably top 8 fantasy quarterback this week.
All right, my word is powerful, and I'm going to go full homer on this one. Zamir White of my beloved Raiders. I'm putting on powerful. And here's the reason. a couple of weeks ago, I questioned a lot. Against the Chargers, I think it was pretty fair to question, was the lack of defense really the issue, or was Zamir playing that well? Look back at what he did against the Chiefs, and look back at how bad that offense was. Aiden O'Connell, this is not a misspeak, did not complete a pass after the first quarter. And they still won the football game because in the fourth quarter, when they needed to get yards, Zamir White did that against a banged-up offensive line that was really a shell of what it usually is personnel-wise. I think the Raiders have shown you, whether Zamir White or if Josh Jacobs somehow gets healthy enough, I think you can trust at this point that over the last 2 weeks, they have one path to try to win football games, and that's running the football. And they've been able to do it for 2 straight weeks. Zamir White has been a mini revelation over the last few weeks. If you're lucky enough to have him sitting around in the league, I think he can actually get you some big points. Frankly, if I'd have played him in my own damn league, I'd still be alive. It's fine. All right, Matt, give us your word is premium. Matt, what do you have for premium?
Ooh, baby. All of us Nico Collins bros, we are so back. Nico Collins, one of the most premium late round picks you could make this year. Honestly, after all the bright optimism, the Texans offense has been in somewhat of a free fall of late, but you could say that here in week 17, CJ Stroud's return provides a nice little squishy pillow to break their fall. Nico Collins, 4th on the team in routes run in week 16, trailing only Dalton Schultz, though, in targets per route run. So what that tells us here, it was clear the Texans were trying to ease Nico Collins back into the mix here, coming off a calf injury, the second time he had suffered that injury this season. But when he was on the field, they were trying to get him the ball. He did find the end zone. With CJ Stroud back in the mix, Nico Collins another week healthier, going against the Titans defense that ranks 29th in dropback success rate. I think Nico Collins is a smash start. You got to get him in your lineups here in week 17.
We can all agree that Matt Harmon just won the MVP. I will peek behind the curtain. The challenge of the day was to see who could get squishy pillows worked into the show seamlessly. Matt Harmon absolutely just took us to school, squishy pillow school. No matter what you're looking for in a light-duty truck, the 2023 Ram 1500's got you covered. You can score yours at ram.com. All right, it's time to help some people. Hashtag AskFFL is the way to get into the conversation. Looking at some tough flex decisions with multiple players submitted by you incredible people. So let's get some in here and see what we've got. The first of them comes from Header2X, who says Mostert, Breece Hall, Flowers, Ridley, Thielen need to start 2 of them in full PPR. Andy Behrens, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't think I could sit Raheem Mostert, right? I know he's a little bit banged up. It does seem like he's trending toward playing. So if Raheem Mostert's going to be on the field, I'm going to go ahead and play the guy with 21 touchdowns and 1,000 rushing yards, right? Like I think he's somebody you got to go with. And it's hard to veer away from Breece Hall here. There are some good options at receiver, but I got to go Breece Hall. Again, he was targeted 16 times a week ago. He's getting like a half dozen receptions more often than not. So I think you got to go that route, especially in full PPR.
All right, let's take the next question from J.G. McGee, which is just fun to say. Pick 2, McLaurin, Henry, Chandler, and Chase. Matt Harmon, what do you got?
Okay, well, I get to say the obvious caveat that you got to go Jamar Chase if he is active. If he's out there, you have to play him. I think the other option here is definitely Derrick Henry. He's the clear-cut guy that I'm rolling out here. It was obviously a super big disappointment last time he played the Houston Texans, but we saw a nice little rebound last week, so he's an obvious guy. Now, if Jamar Chase doesn't go, tough call between Ty Chandler and Terry McLaurin. I think I'm ultimately, though, going to go back to Ty Chandler just because we saw them go really pass-heavy last week with Nick Mullins. I don't expect that to be the same with Jaren Hall here. And the Green Bay Packers defense is blatantly unserious. So I think you can trust Ty Chandler there if Jamar Chase doesn't go.
Blatantly unserious is going to be the name of this show next year. All right, Peter next. Higgins, Saquon, Pickens, Montgomery, 1 running back, 1 flex. Hashtag AskFFL. Andy Behrens, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm not gonna chase the big game from George Pickens, right? It's still a pretty low volume situation, so that's not gonna happen. If I'm gonna start 2 here, it's gonna be Saquon. I'm gonna trust the volume there. I'm gonna trust the talent. And I'm gonna go David Montgomery as well. He's got we're all excited about Jahmyr Gibbs, but Montgomery still has 17 carries in each of the last 2 weeks. He's got 11 touchdowns on the season. It's a shootout of a game, so I want the 2 running backs here.
All right, the next question comes from Andy B, which may or may not be Andy Behrens. We don't know. It just says Andy B, and it says Jay Taylor, Derrick Henry, Tony Pollard, CEH, and then gives us the qualifier. Usually not even a consideration, but Pacheco and McKinnon might both be out. Fantasy final in my league. Have to play 2 of them. Matt Harmon, what do you think?
I mean, I hope this isn't Andy Behrens after that impression. Now, if it is Andy, I mean, I definitely want to give him good advice here. And this is tough. This is really tough. Tony Pollard's the 4th ranked option here if we don't get Isaiah Pacheco and CEH is out there. Again, I think Henry's in a pretty good spot here. He's probably my number 1 choice here. Jonathan Taylor hasn't really popped off with super efficient rushing of late. But the Raiders defense has been hot as well. Close call between CH and Jonathan Taylor, but I think I'm going to trust the guy who's just more central to his offense. That's Jonathan Taylor. So give me the 2 AFC South backs there.
All right, next up, Joey M. Rodriguez said, and I managed to get into the championship. Now I need to start 2 in PPR out of Calvin Ridley, George Pickens, Cortland Sutton, and JSN. Hashtag AskFFL. I ask you, Andy Behrens, what do you think?
Yeah, first of all, I want to thank Matt Harmon for answering my question previously. I think I'm gonna go Calvin Ridley here, and I just veered away from George Pickens, but I am gonna go after the upside of George Pickens in this one. Not looking great for Cortland Sutton this week, right? He's in the concussion protocol. Plus, they've had the quarterback change, which might not be bad for him, but I don't think we can count on him playing in this one. So it's gonna be Pickens and Ridley for me.
All right, we're going to keep more of your help coming. Hashtag AskFFL. But don't worry. If your season's already done like mine is, it's okay. We've got plenty of help out there for everybody that isn't still playing games right now. Because when we come back, we'll look ahead to 2024 and the rookies that can make a fantasy impact right away. Stick around. We're back here on Fantasy Football Live, getting you set for your fantasy championships. And, it's time to sauce it up with 5 new flavors of wings from Popeyes. And you, the viewers, each week, we get your bold fantasy takes on the week's hottest topics through social media. This week's question is a simple one with a complicated answer. Who was the fantasy MVP this season? So let's take a look at some of the answers we got from everybody. First up, EJ Miller says, Mostert. Easy to say the big names, but I'll go with this guy. Picked him up in the 10th round, number 2 scoring running back. Andy, what do you think? MVP?
I love this call. First of all, Raheem Mostert has over 1,000 yards this year. He's got a league high 21 touchdowns. And here's the thing: he was universally drafted outside the top 120 picks. He's been legit great among the NFL leaders in missed tackles forced, yards after contact, all sorts of goodies that eventually show up in fantasy numbers. The thing that to me separates him a little bit from McCaffrey and from Tyreek is that like only 3 or 5 people maybe in your draft had a shot at those guys, but we all passed on Raheem Mostert like 10 times. And this means that you can have him on a roster in combination with anybody else, right? Like we have teams out there that are McCaffrey and Mostert teams. We have Tyreek and Mostert teams, and those are the ones that are just absolutely dominating and that are still active in week 17.
Speaking of McCaffrey, Jason submitted his pick for MVP. Not a shocker here. I think a lot of people would agree. It's just McCaffrey eating a big old turkey leg, which makes me think of Matt Harmon. It seems like Matt Harmon's like the man on this show. He seems like the big turkey leg guy. What do you think?
I would definitely not say no to a turkey leg. The thing about Christian McCaffrey that's interesting, though, a lot of people did say no to Christian McCaffrey at the top of the draft. You look back at consensus ADP, I mean, Justin Jefferson was the clear-cut number 1 pick across the board on basically every platform. Jamar Chase was the consensus 2nd overall pick, and as the lead lobbyist for big receiver, I take no responsibility for that, okay? No responsibility. I actually ended up with Christian McCaffrey on a lot of teams this year, which the fun part about that is you had Christian McCaffrey on your team this year. The unfun part about that is that if you didn't make it to the fantasy championship with Christian McCaffrey on your team, you get to feel like a complete jackass, which I certainly do feel like in a couple spots.
It's okay. You know what? Some years are growing years. This was just a growing year for Harmon. That's all. All right, let's take the next answer here from Raphael, who says Tyreek Hill, and then gives us the back handspring. Good action. I like this. Andy Behrens, fantasy MVP.
Yeah, he's close. I mean, shout out to Tyreek for making sure that like the one game he missed this season was when so many of his managers had buys in the fantasy playoffs. That was kind of legendary. The missed game, though, probably takes him out of the MVP conversation, but I will allow for the possibility of just a monster week against the Ravens that puts him right back at the top. Guy has 8 games with 100 yards and another with 99, so no complaints there. He's been basically a week in, week out, absolute star, wide receiver 1, or at least a top 5 fantasy receiver most weeks. Still has an outside shot at 2,000 yards. So I would just say that this conversation is not completely closed, and he has a shot.
Yeah, a monster game against the Ravens. Easier said than done. All right, and let's get one more in here from Vinny C, who gives us Josh Allen. I don't, know, with the swaggy arm movement there, Matt. So what do you think?
I mean, I feel like for the second year in a row, I'm saying that all of my good fantasy teams were my fantasy teams with Josh Allen on it. He is like the poster child at this point of lay-round quarterback. I mean, it can still work for sure. If you pick the right players, you stream the right guys, it can still work for you. But, man, it just feels really good in the 3rd round, something like that, to just take Josh Allen and never think about that quarterback position again. The guy is a total machine. I will definitely allow him in the fantasy MVP conversation.
Remember, you guys can sauce up your game day with Popeye's Wings, now available in 5 new flavors, including Signature Hot and Honey Barbecue. Make it a combo. Cool things off with an ice-cold Coca-Cola. Available now for pickup and delivery at Popeyes.com or, of course, through the Popeyes app. All right, let's take a look now at some rookies. And, it's never too early to start thinking about what to keep an eye on for next year, right? For everybody that's already out, and you're trying to figure out what things look like, we thought we'd give you guys a little bit of love, a little bit of a head start on what you could start watching for rookies that can make an immediate impact in 2024. Gentlemen, I'm going to throw one name out for you that's a little bit different. And this one is just because I think people weren't necessarily paying attention at the same level. Rome Odunze of Washington, the wide receiver, is absolutely incredible. I'm honored to be a Biletnikoff voter, and I thought this year the Biletnikoff vote was the toughest I've ever had to do, going through Marvin Harrison or Rome Odunze. And it was interesting to me talking to upwards of 20 former wide receivers that played high-level college or NFL football, and they are split on which one is better. Odunze is going to make a great pro, not just because of the way he runs, but because he catches absolutely everything in front of him, and the body size that he has and the offense he's played in makes me think he could be an immediate impact sort of guy. This isn't Jalen Hyatt coming out that's going to have to learn new routes or do any of the development. This is somebody coming in that I think day one makes an impact. So that's my pick. Matt Harmon, give me somebody you've got your eye on.
Oh, see, I know you people out there. You think I'm going to come in here and talk about a wide receiver. You're like, oh, let me get into that. I've done 0 charting work on prospects, so I am not going on the record here to tell you which wide receiver is going to be what in 2024. What I will tell you, though, is I do got both of these eyeballs on Drake May and where he is going to end up. Because if you look at just the top 3 picks in the NFL draft right now, according to Tankathon, if the season ended today, it'd be number 1, Carolina Panthers sending the pick to the Chicago Bears. 2, you got the Arizona Cardinals. 3, you've got the Washington Commanders. Look, maybe Caleb Williams goes number 1. Maybe Drake May goes number 1. That's certainly possible. I'm looking at the Bears and I'm looking at the Commanders, and I'm seeing 2 guys that I am desperately trying to get off of the Allen Robinson career trajectory. Okay, DJ Moore actually had a pretty good thing going with Justin Fields this year. That's fine. But the guy has suffered through enough at this point. Let's get him a solution. Let's get him a consistent franchise guy. And my God, Terry McLaurin. Enough already with trying to talk ourselves into Sam Howell. Enough already with trying to talk ourselves into Taylor Heineke. And definitely enough with the Carson Wentz types. I mean, Jacoby Brissett gets in there and we're all like standing ovation. No, I'm trying to see Drake May with one of these 2 teams and rescuing these 2 wide receivers next season.
By the way, if you missed it, Nate Tice has a mock draft out on Yahoo Sports right now, and he has Drake May going 1st overall. So, again, the momentum continues for that quarterback to come out and be the star of this class. Andy Behrens, give us somebody you've got your eye on, rookie to watch in 2024.
Fitz, it's such a good receiver class. I don't need to tell you that. I'm just going to stick with my home conference and a guy who's been roasting it for a couple years, and that's Marvin Harrison Jr. He is going to be great wherever he lands. You just need to have seen him play one time to know that. He is, of course, the Biletnikoff winner. He's coming off back-to-back seasons with 1,200 yards and 14 touchdowns. He has also carved up all of the best defenses in college football over the past couple years, right? Georgia, Michigan, Iowa, Penn State. Anybody you put in front of him, he has a day. This is simply a guy who just feasts every week without regard to the opponent. He's 6'3", he's got good speed, he's got elite hands, technique. He just toys with defenders trying to cover him. If there is a glaring weakness here, I have missed it. I also don't think that we need to really sweat his situation all that much. I think Harrison is just one of those guys who elevates an offense wherever he goes. I'm ready to draft him right now tonight.
I will say this, my favorite Marvin Harrison Jr. stat for this year is 0. That's how many drops he had. Credited with 0 drops over the course of the season. That is incredible work. Okay, as always, you can keep with us as we'll give you more information on the guys that are coming up on Yahoo Sports and in the app. In the meantime, each week, Sal Vetri offers up unique fantasy advice here on the show. Let's check back in now. It's time for Sal's 7 key findings for Week 17.
These are the 7 key findings that'll help you win your Week 17 fantasy matchup. Finding number 1 is the best spot of the week. And this is for DeAndre Swift, who over the last 2 games has come on strong, averaging 20 opportunities a game on 60% of the snaps. Now, the strong usage and solid production should only continue this week against Arizona. The Cardinals allow the second most production to opposing running backs this year. And the Eagles are 11-point favorites in this one, starting running backs in similar spots as that big of favorites this year average over 15 points. Finding number 2 is the sketchy spot of the week. And this is for Gus Edwards, who in Week 16 got to play his first game in a while without the rookie Keaton Mitchell, who's out for the year for the Ravens. And Gus had a solid game. He put up 13.5 fantasy points and totaled 70 yards. Now, he actually played less snaps than Justice Hill in this game, but Edwards still saw the high value touches in the red zone. But this week is a bit sketchy because he faces the Dolphins' number 2 ranked run defense. Miami held Tony Pollard to only 38 scoreless yards last week, and over the last 5 weeks of the season, they're only giving up 2.7 yards per carry. Finding number 3 is the pickup and play of the week. And this will be for Chig Okonkwo, who in Week 16 had his best game of the year, catching all 6 of his targets for over 60 yards and a touchdown. And since Week 12, Okonkwo is earning over 20% of the Titans' targets. And this week he'll face the Texans, and athletic tight ends have had their way with the Houston linebackers this year, which bodes well for Okonkwo, who has elite speed and burst. Houston allows the 3rd most production to opposing tight ends this year. You can start Chig this week. Finding number 4 is a championship defense. And this is going to be for the Las Vegas Raiders, who since Week 9 have the number 1 fantasy defense in the league when Antonio Pierce, their new head coach, took over. This defense is available in 74% of Yahoo leagues, and they'll have another quality matchup this week against Gardner Minshew and the Colts. Minshew has thrown the 4th most interceptable passes this year. You need to start the Raiders if they're available in your league. Finding number 5 is a player who is trending up. And this is for the Vikings running back Ty Chandler, who in Week 16, we finally got to see him take over the Minnesota backfield. Because despite Alexander Mattison returning from injury, Chandler still saw 33 snaps compared to just 4 for Mattison. And this week, Ty's going to take on the Packers, who allow the most production to opposing running backs the last 2 months. And these opposing running backs have scored touchdowns in 6 straight games against Green Bay. Chandler is a must start in Week 17. Finding number 6 is a player who is trending down. And this is actually multiple players. It's the Broncos pass catchers. And this started in Week 16 when Cortland Sutton left with a concussion after running just 2 routes in the game. This opened up playing time for Brandon Johnson, who earned a team-high 5 targets, and it looked like Johnson and or Jerry Jeudy would be decent flex options in Week 17 against the Chargers. However, the Denver Broncos have opted to sit their starting quarterback Russell Wilson the final 2 games due to financial reasons, which means Jared Stidham will start for the Broncos, and he only averages 5 yards per attempt in games where he throws at least 10 passes in his career. This is a major downgrade for all the Broncos pass catchers. Finding number 7 is an injury to watch, and this is for the Chiefs running back Isaiah Pacheco, who left in Week 16 with a concussion. And running backs who suffer concussions this year typically miss the following week. Now, in Week 16, Clyde Edwards-Helaire filled in, and he totaled 48 yards on just 7 touches. And this week, the Chiefs are 7-point favorites against the Bengals, which is important because Patrick Mahomes' starting running backs, when they're 7-point favorites, average 14 fantasy points per game. So if Pacheco was to miss Week 17, you can start Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So these have been your key findings for Week 17. Best of luck in your fantasy championships. All you have to do now, as always, is take this information to schmack around your competition.
We're also going to figure out how to help you schmack around your competition for next year. It's never too early for the way too early first round mock for next season. Looking ahead to 2024, we're going to use Yahoo's standard scoring, which is a half-point PPR. And the draft order was drawn at random. That's what I've been told anyway. Matt Harmon has the honor to pick first. Remember, these are the players that we think are going to be the best next year. So, Harmon, what do you got for us? Who are you taking first off the board?
Yeah, let's just keep it simple. I'm taking Christian McCaffrey here. The guy showed once again this year that he is a unique advantage at the running back position at basically any fantasy position. So let's keep it simple. Christian McCaffrey, number 1 overall pick. Come on down.
Coward. All right, next up, Sal is going second. Sal, what do you got for us?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Tyreek Hill. He's on pace for 1,900 yards this season, and the dude's insane. His yards per route run is over 4 yards per route run this year. I haven't seen it that high in past years. Devontae Adams has been great. He's in the low 3s. And when you look at this team, really not much should change. 2 is there for at least another year. Mike McDaniel's under contract for at least 2 more years. I think it's going to keep rolling, even though Tyreek will be 30. No worries there. Give me Tyreek.
I love that pick. You guys are on a roll. I go next in this draft order, and I like continuity. If we're talking way too early, like all kidding aside, you start to look at some of the other great wide receivers. There's questions about what's going to happen to the wide receivers around them, what their quarterback will look like, what their offensive coordinator looks like. I don't have those questions with CeeDee Lamb. I don't think that there's any chance that his situation is changing. And you look at the receiver he's grown into. I right now favor CeeDee Lamb, not because I think he's better than guys like Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase necessarily. I do think that his situation is more predictable next year. So I will take CeeDee Lamb, which then puts Andy Behrens on the clock. What do you got, Andy?
Yeah, I'm going to go Justin Jefferson. He was the consensus number 1 this year, and not unreasonably so. The guy's played 8 games this season. He got injured in 2 of them, and he's still sitting on 823 receiving yards. It's absolutely ridiculous. He's gone over 140 receiving yards 4 times. Also, he won't turn 25 until the summer. He's just coming into perhaps his best years. I think he's got a great year ahead of him. He's got a great year behind him. He just had 1,800 receiving yards. So give me Jefferson here.
By the way, this is a reminder of how many dynamic weapons they are. We go back to the top of the order. Matt, you're back on the clock. Who do you got at number 5?
Yeah, like I mentioned, over the summer, Jamar Chase was the consensus 2nd overall pick. And even if maybe McCaffrey was the right answer at 1 or 2, whatever, like I don't think the process of taking Jamar Chase is wrong there, because at some point he is going to have an eruption season because he is that type of talent. Now, it clearly wasn't this year, because Joe Burrow came in not healthy and then obviously left the season early with an injury. But whenever Chase and Burrow were both healthy and on the field, the production was there. I mean, T. Higgins might not be a part of this team next year. I don't think that really changes the picture for Jamar Chase. He is already a lead dog, the clear-cut number 1 on this team. And if anything, it maybe just pushes more targets his way. So I don't mind betting that 24 is going to be the big eruption Jamar Chase season. It's coming at some point. Why not next year?
It's a really fair point. I took the opposite angle on the targets, but it's an interesting way to look at it by you. Sal, you're back on the clock at number 6 in this draft. What do you have?
Yeah, at this 6th spot, give me A.J. Brown. Look, last year, 2022, the offense in Philadelphia was extremely efficient. Their starters weren't even playing in a lot of the fourth quarters, and Brown put up 1,500 yards, double-digit touchdowns. This year, it's a little bit different. Jalen Hurts has been getting a new injury every week, it seems. They've been less efficient, but still, A.J. Brown is on pace for 1,500 yards. And next year, he's still going to be 27, prime of his career, the number 1 target in this offense. Jalen Hurts will be there. Maybe they lose Brian Johnson, their offensive coordinator. It seems like some of that steam has worn off, though. Either way, I still think you're going to get a priority option as a first-round pick here in Brown.
That puts me back on the clock, and I'm just going to go back to my reaction earlier this year. I haven't covered college football for a while. When Devon Achane was drafted by the Dolphins, I freaked out during the broadcast. I thought it was an absolutely incredible pick. I traded up in my dynasty leagues to get him this year. I thought it was going to be a great moment for him. I know Mostert has had a killer year. I just don't think that's sustainable. So the fact that they've been able to do that this year is great. I think those touches will go to Devon as the years continue to wear on. So I like Achane. I loved him when he was drafted. I love what he's done this year. I think he'll get healthy and he'll have the chance to be the guy next year because I don't think Mostert runs that back. So I'll aggressively go after Achane. Andy Behrens, that puts you back on the clock.
Yeah, I'm going to take Jonathan Taylor here. And this season, man, it's been a crazy ride for Taylor, right? It's had injuries. It's had a trade demand. It's had a lot. but when he plays, it's been pretty good. Also, he's still only 24 years old. He's just a couple seasons removed from leading the NFL in touchdowns and scrimmage yards. By the time we're drafting next year and we've seen the Jonathan Taylor, Anthony Richardson, Michael Pittman thing work a little bit over the summer, his situation is going to look great. And I think we're definitely going to be taking him in the middle of the first round.
All right, so that takes us back to the top of the order. Harmon, you're up.
Yeah, considering a couple young running backs here between Jahmyr Gibbs and Breece Hall, I will just ever so slightly break the tie in favor of Breece Hall. Mentioned all the receiving production earlier. He's been one of the most dangerous, most efficient receiving backs this season. He's been heavily involved in the receiving game. We expect, by all accounts, Aaron Rodgers is going to be back with this team. The big question for Breece Hall this year was, could he stay healthy? Could he return to being an explosive player coming off that ACL tear? I mean, that he has passed with flying colors. So I don't really have a lot of questions about Breece Hall coming into this next year. Let's just get some offensive linemen in New York, and I think we should be ready to rock.
All right, Sally, you're back up on the clock. What you got?
Yeah, I think the Breece pick was great. That's the pick I was going to take here. But I'll go with Kyren Williams, who was the league winner for many people as a waiver wire ad this year. But he's much more than that. As you can see, a first-round pick, I believe, next year. He does everything for this team. He's getting early down work, red zone, 2-minute offense, pass protection. Sean McVay trusts him. And the last time he trusted a guy to do all these things was Todd Gurley. And we saw how that went. Massive years for a couple of seasons. He's just 23 years old. No competition this year. So that could be a concern if they add some into next year. But I'm not sure it's actually going to pull too much away from him. Give me Kyren Williams.
Yeah, that's honestly who I wanted to take in this situation, specifically because McVay does love a bell cow back, right? Like, seems like this is a perfect marriage. Great pick by you. At this point, I'm going to take a little bit of a flyer on talent and just presume that two coaches can't screw somebody up this bad. Bijan Robinson is going to go for me at this point, and I'm just going to guess that whoever the coach of the Atlanta Falcons is next year will come in and actually pitch. This is what we're going to do with Bijan. And then I'm going to presume that they'll figure something out. Like, there's no way the organization is going to be dumb enough to run it back without a quarterback 2 years in a row. So I think there's going to be a new quarterback. I think there's going to be a new coach. And then you still have an incredibly talented player there in Bijan that I think can put up some numbers. So I'm just almost looking at this year like a wash. It's just totally the organization can't be that bad 2 years in a row. That takes us back to Andy Behrens.
Can't it really? I'm gonna go Amon-Ra St. Brown here. St. Brown is a guy who has 8 games with 100 receiving yards so far this season. He's got 106 catches on the year. He's about to clear 1,300 receiving yards. Still got a couple games to go. I would actually probably go back-to-back Lions at the turn, by the way. I don't know when the last time is we did that in fantasy drafts, but I would probably go St. Brown and then Jahmyr Gibbs, because there's definitely an argument to squeeze Jahmyr Gibbs into the first round in fantasy drafts.
Did you have any concern, though, knowing that likely they're going to lose their offensive coordinator? Does that matter to you at all?
I mean, it matters, but this has been a really, really solid offense for a couple of seasons in a row. I would think that we're not just going to start from scratch next year. They have to build on the things that have worked so well over the past couple seasons. We're talking about an offense that's top 5 in yards, top 5 in scoring. I think they hold that together. The skill players here are just too good.
All right, let's move on. We're going to get some help from you guys. We're going to give you some help, I should say. Hashtag AskFFL with some play calling. This is where we answer more of your questions and figure out what we've got here. The first call comes from Mongoose5271, who specifically says, Andy Behrens, get your barf bag ready. Flacco, Geno, or Tyrod for Superflex quarterback. And then he says, Geno kind of turned back into a pumpkin. Flacco could do the same as Tyrod. Well, okay, so that's my voice for explanation tonight. Andy Behrens, since he added you, you should really respond. What do you got on this?
Yeah, I gotta be out on Flacco again after with no Amari Cooper tonight. That probably can't happen. Has Geno really turned back into a pumpkin? I'm not sure that's right. A couple of touchdowns last week in a win, led a great late drive, and then before that it was the Dallas game, and he absolutely cooked a really, really good defense. So I'm not so sure that is the right way to view Geno. That is where I would go here. He gets Pittsburgh. That's a defense that prior to last week had been lit up for 3 straight games. So I want Geno here with that great receiving core.
All right, the next question comes from Steve. I love it when you call me Big Poppy. We'll go with that. Is Zay Flowers for reals? I don't know why it's pluralized. I wonder if I should play him or DK Metcalf. Got to stay with A.J. Brown. Puka is a lock. A lot of extra explanation there, Steve. We're going to have to work on that. But Matt Harmon, what are you thinking on this one?
Let me tell you, Zay Flowers is definitely for reals. If you're looking for a reason to get away from DK Metcalf, I guess you could say that, hey, he's probably going to be the guy that draws the matchup with Joey Porter Jr. Now, we saw last week, T. Higgins was the guy who primarily drew that shadow matchup, but then he did get one play away from Joey Porter Jr., kind of a zone coverage look there. And, oh, yeah, he just went ahead and housed that play, which that can obviously happen for DK Metcalf. I think you're looking at Metcalf as kind of that volatile guy, whereas Zay Flowers, I do think, presents you a pretty solid floor in this matchup against the Dolphins that the Ravens need to win. I mean, they are, if they win this game, they roll number one seed in the AFC. So I think I'm trending towards Flowers a little bit, as crazy as that sounds.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, there is a perfect way to ask a question, and it's the next one. Spencer comes in and says, which two from Mostert, Cup, Pollard, PPR league? See that? Just the facts. That's all we need. That goes to Sal. What do you got with just the facts?
Yes, we love it. We'll start with an easy one here, and it's going to be Cup for me. Great matchup against the Giants. They have a 25-point team total. All those things are nice, and he seems to be back. He's getting the volume. The last month, getting over 9 targets per game. So we'll set Cup aside. He's in there. After that, I'm looking at this, and look, Tony Pollard hasn't been great. 38 scoreless yards in a brutal matchup last week, but still getting over 70% of the snaps. Tough matchup this week against the Lions, but their linebackers, you can put up points in the receiving game as a running back against them. And really, we're just going here because Raheem Mostert, he's been the 1A for Miami, but A-Chain is slowly getting ramped up. They're probably saving him mainly for the postseason, but it's getting closer to a 50-50 split. I'll just take the guy still getting workhorse usage in Pollard.
All right, let's get the next question in from Ricky Denton, also MVP in construction. D. Goddard or E. Ingram this week? That's it. That's all he wants to know. All right, Andy Behrens, what do you think?
Yeah, these are good options, obviously. It's really hard to veer away from Ingram at this point, though. He's got double-digit catches in 2 of his last 3, 15 targets last week, and we just don't see that kind of volume outside of, like, David Njoku and almost nobody else at tight end, right? So I think I probably got to go Ingram here. Plenty of worries about the quarterback position, obviously, and the health of Trevor Lawrence. That is a concern. But, man, since that receiving core has been really banged up, Ingram has just been feasting.
All right, the next question comes from Epon, or Epon? Epon? Yeah, sure. I had Russell Wilson and Tua picked up Derek Carr. So Carr at Tampa Bay versus Tua at Baltimore. Matt Harmon, what do you think for Epon? Epon?
I just want to say for the record, too, I don't mind when there's a little bit of, extra stuff in the question. Just one name and the other name, that feels too transactional. Like, let's have a conversation here, people, all right? So I don't listen to Fitz. I like when you send me a little more details about what's going on. Let me know what your problems are. As for this particular problem, I mean, I just can't do Derek Carr. I know he's got the better matchup. I know he's got the great garbage time production last week. And I know that Tua has not had 300 yards in multiple weeks. It's been a while since he had multiple passing touchdowns. But this, again, big matchup against the Ravens. I think I can I can sleep better at night knowing that I played Tua and not doing the whole Derek Carr experience. Whether that's right or wrong, that's up to you, Epon.
Let's get one more in here, and it goes to the great Sal Vetri. Sal, Joe Wallace says Nico Collins and Mike Evans, non-PPR. See, Sal likes the brevity here. What do you got, buddy?
Yeah, this is a championship roster. When you got these 2 studs and one of them has to sit this week, I'm going to go Nico Collins here. CJ Stroud practiced today. He's trending to play. Nico returned last week, only played like half the overall passing downs, was limited, but he practiced in full today, so he should be ready to go. And he's going to get the Titans, who give up the most production to outside receivers. That's where he plays. We saw this 2 weeks ago with the B team for the Texans. Case Keenum and Noah Brown, they went out there. Noah Brown had over 80 yards and a touchdown. I think it's going to be even better with Stroud and Collins this week.
We have to give a special thanks to Sal for jumping on with us all season long. Also for having perfect hair and a golden tan through the entire process too. I don't know how he does it, but it is chef's kiss. You can keep up with him at Sal Vetri DFS on social media. Sal, my friend, thank you so much for always being you make the show look pretty and you make the show smart. We appreciate you, brother.
Oh, you're too kind. Thanks for having me this year, guys. It was a ton of fun, and hopefully we can do it next year as well.
All right, we need to step away for another quick break, but on the other side, we got bold fantasy predictions for the 2024 fantasy season. Don't go away. We're going to shock you next. Welcome back to Fantasy Football Live. We need to take a look at the injury reports coming out of practices today. Some big names we're keeping an eye on, not the least of which Zay Flowers with the calf, missed another practice Thursday. Cole Kmet didn't practice with the knee injury. Keenan Allen worked on the side with some trainers, but the heel is still bothering him. And maybe this one seems pretty substantial to all of us. Jalen Waddle, ankle. Shefty reporting he's unlikely to go against Baltimore. Obviously, that's a huge deal. Also, I want to take a quick look at some concussions here. We're monitoring Michael Pittman in the concussion protocol, Cortland Sutton in the concussion protocol, Isaiah Pacheco still in the concussion protocol. Gentlemen, let's take a look real quick at this Jalen Waddle injury, because obviously so many people are relying on different Dolphins. This is a big matchup against Baltimore. Harmon, I see you shaking your head. What are your thoughts on Waddle? Like, what's the risk here? Are you willing to play this?
I mean, I don't think he's going to play, and he's been a guy that's just been banged up all season long, like off and on the field with a lot of different ailments, a lot of different things going on with him from a physical perspective right now. You can look at some on-off splits in terms of your boy Devin Achane. Like, there are some games where he's popped off. The run game in general has been more critical for the Miami Dolphins when they don't have Jalen Waddle. So if you're looking for a reason to play Achane, I think you could tell yourself that story. But yeah, I mean, Waddle he's not been a consistent factor for this team like he was last year. I think some of that is just variance. I think he's still a very good player. And look, Tyreek, as Andy says, is having one of those seasons. It's tough for Waddle to get going in that bit of circumstance there. So look, if you've been relying on him, I definitely would try to find an alternative for this week.
Yeah, Andy, it feels like this is one of those moments where, again, because so many players from the Dolphins are on fantasy leagues, we're desperate to get guys in. I just think with this particular injury with Waddle, it just feels like you have to sort of find another path.
Yeah, there's no direct replacement for exactly the set of traits that Jalen Waddle has on that roster, right? Like, you can try to make a case for Cedric Wilson, you could try to make a case for Braxton Berrios, but they don't do what Waddle does, and they don't have his skill set. Achane may benefit from this. You have to do some mental gymnastics to make that happen. But Achane himself has not been perfectly helped. Like, the way he came out of the gates is just not what we've seen from him over the past few weeks. So he's not exactly the same guy. I think what you just hope for with Waddle is that they shelve him and get him right for the playoffs. That is almost certainly the way the team is thinking.
All right, so from those injuries, let's get to some bold predictions for 2024. We're here to help you get ready for next year's draft. It's never too early to grab a note, start writing some things down, and figure out what you should look for. So let's go bold with some fantasy predictions, and we will start with Matt Harmon. Give us something bold.
Yeah, I definitely don't want the people to watch this segment or, going into it and search my name on any social media platform for Drake London and bold prediction, because you won't find anything from this season. It was extremely incorrect. You won't. But let's focus on the future. Let's not talk about the past anymore. Drake London in 2024 will be a top 12 fantasy wide receiver. You mentioned the name Michael Pittman earlier, Fitz, and this strikes me as a very similar situation to Michael Pittman last year. A guy that got steamed way up the draft boards going into 2022, was a massive disappointment in fantasy, really to no fault of his own. Like, you watch this guy play, being Michael Pittman, and you're like, he's the same player that he was with Carson Wentz a year before, where he had over 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns. He was a guy that's a dominant separator underneath, and he can win downfield in contested situations. He just needs a better coached offense, a better designed offense, and a better quarterback. And when I watch Drake London, that is the exact same thing I see. This guy's a baller. He's a separator against man coverage who can also win those acrobatic catches. Those are the players you want to bet on. The rest of your little sheep league mate out there will be like, oh, Drake London burned me last year. You're going to get right back on the Drake London train in 2024, and I think he has a chance to be a wide receiver one, just like Michael Pittman was this year.
Andy, you're going to work out a fun voice for us? Like, I feel like we've got voices. You've got some time to think about it, Andy. While you're thinking about a fun voice, I'll give you a poll prediction for 2024. I think 2 rookie quarterbacks are going to make immediate fantasy impact, not just for themselves with the numbers, but also for the people that are around them, because this is a more prepared quarterback class than we've seen in quite a long time. Caleb Williams, who you see there, we're all familiar with and has been widely considered to be the top prospect because of his playmaking. He is an immediate impact step in and play guy, but so is Drake May, who we talked about earlier. And when you talk about Drake May, just because he was playing at North Carolina and just because Sam Howell hasn't turned out to be great, you cannot factor that that in. And Jaden Daniels now being mocked in the top 5 for a reason. Somebody that can beat you with his arms and his legs. He's a better developed at this point Anthony Richardson, who I believe is going to be great in the NFL. So I think you've got the chance with those 3 guys, particularly with the weapons on the offenses of the top 5 teams that are picking right now. I think there's a real opportunity for 2 of the 3 quarterbacks to make immediate fantasy impact. That's my bold take. Andy Behrens, you've had time to think about one. What's your bold take?
Man, I really do have to come up with a signature voice next year. It is on my list of things to do. I got to have that Harmon voice. I can't copy that, but I'm going to do it. My bold take, and listen, this is not like necessarily the way I'm going to rank it next year. These are bold predictions, okay? But I'll throw this out there. I think Anthony Richardson can be a top 3 fantasy quarterback in his second season. Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts have demonstrated this year that the path to the top of the scoring leaderboard is paved with rushing touchdowns. And Richardson had 4 in the 4 games he played before the shoulder injury ended his season. He actually only really played 2 full games. And in those 2 weeks, he scored 24 and 32 fantasy points. And that was like in the first month of his NFL career. The Colts had constructed an offense that really leaned into what he does best. Plus, they've surrounded him with excellent weapons. This is just a rare rushing talent, huge arm. He was going to be a top 5 or top 6 fantasy quarterback this year if he had simply remained healthy. So maybe this isn't even that bold. I think the most optimistic projections probably weren't optimistic enough for him this season. He is going to re-arrive next year with top 3 upside.
Yeah, especially considering the question of who's Shane Steichen as a head coach has been answered. He's done a spectacular job there. So those are some bold predictions. Again, they're meant to be bold, so lay off if they're not 100% accurate. I'm out here throwing
no accountability. There's no accountability. If we say bold predictions, you cannot hold us accountable. But if we get close, we get the victory lap. Those are the
100%. Like as the resident trash talker on this show, you only talk when you win, and then you don't acknowledge the losses. Okay, let's have a little bit of fun. It's time for some fantasy face-off. I'm going to sit here with Matt Harmon, and we're going to take a look at this or that. One player versus another player. Go down the list. And today's player is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. All right, so we're looking at CEH, and he is taking on Najee Harris first. Would you rather have Clyde Edwards-Helaire or Najee Harris?
Yeah, let's just for one say it is hilarious that we are sitting here in week 17 of the 2023 season, a long way from CEH being a first-round fantasy pick. That was a thing that happened, folks, if you're new. And we're talking about him as a guy that you probably need to start here because of the injuries in that Kansas City backfield. I think when you stack these 2 guys up together particularly, it's clearly CEH. As long as he's out there, I know he's dealing with a little bit of an illness right now, but as long as he's out there and Isaiah Pacheco is not, you are clearly starting CEH against a moribund Bengals defense in week 17.
You're so right about what we thought of CEH when he first started. All right, what about Clyde Edwards-Helaire versus Breece Hall, who has been getting a love fest in this show today?
Yeah, I mean, again, very unbiased opinion here on Breece Hall, but I think that Breece Hall is the guy here. Okay, I think, look, this is a little bit of a step too far if we're talking CEH versus Breece Hall. I know this is not a great matchup for Breece Hall against the Cleveland Browns defense that's been ferocious for most of this year. They're also bottom 10 in receiving production allowed to running backs. Don't tell me that, even though I bet the over on his catches, but I still think electric player, a guy that has so much more upside if he hits than CEH. Give me Breece Hall in this debate.
All right, what about CEH versus Tyler Algier?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to go CEH on this one. Like, that's a slam dunk. I mean, shoot, even if Isaiah Pacheco was out there, I think you might even be able to consider CEH over Tyler Algier. I know he busted off a big run last week. He's just a tough guy to count on. In the second half of last week's game, the loss to your beloved Raiders, Fitz, shout out to you guys, 24 snaps in the second half. For CEH, he had a 28% carry share, and he had a 13% target share. That's the critical part here. With Algier, there's no real receiving role. With CEH, there is either way.
All right, what about Clyde Edwards-Helaire versus Khalil Herbert?
Yeah, this is another little tricky backfield debate one. Obviously, last week, Khalil Herbert went off. He went off against the Arizona Cardinals, who get run on by everybody. I mean, DeAndre Swift is going to smash them this week, too. He had 51% of the team carries. He played on 52% of the team snaps. This is a tough debate. I think if D'Onta Foreman is back out there, then I'm going to go with CEH, though. You know what? I'll take it back. I'll go with CEH no matter what. I'll go CEH no matter what. Again, Bengals defense has been miserable all season long. They've been a bottom 5 unit in success rate and EPA allowed all year, one of the biggest problems of their season. So, yeah, let's party like it's 2020 and go with CEH.
I think I can say without hesitation it was the best fantasy face-off of the entire season. Why? Because we've learned lessons throughout the entire year. Speaking of lessons learned, let's throw it over to Andy Behrens for his 3 biggest lessons learned in fantasy in 2023.
Yeah, listen, we find valuable fantasy takeaways in every season. I might be too old to learn new things, but it is not too late for you. And I've got 3 fantasy lessons for you from 2023. One, we need to reset expectations for young tight ends. We are coming off a season in which a rookie, Sam Laporta, some of us tried to tell you, is likely to finish as the overall tight end 1. Every rookie record at the position is still within reach for him. But it's not just Sam. Trey McBride has been terrific in his second year. The Packers have a pair of solid rookie tight ends. Dalton Kincaid has been excellent. Jake Ferguson is crushing. Isaiah Likely is crushing. We used to expect nothing from a tight end until maybe their second contract. The thinking was that the learning curve at this spot involves multiple position groups. It's a huge leap from the college level. But increasingly, we just see guys arrive ready to play. Laporta has been a key to Detroit's run game. He never comes off the field. What I'm saying here is that you are going to need to take Brock Bowers very seriously wherever he lands next year, because again, these first contract tight ends are lighting it up. Lesson number 2, there are a variety of ways to attack quarterback in fantasy. Harmon mentioned this earlier, but the dual threat guys have again been the best answer at the position. Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts have pulled away from the field at this point, despite not having unusually great passing seasons, at least by their standards. It's because these two have combined for 28 rushing scores. It is just unfair. Lamar Jackson is a real-life MVP favorite and a top 5 fantasy QB. Basically, the dual threat guys have dominated the position in real life and in our game. And another thing, think about who's injured right at this moment and who is healthy. For the most part, the elite rushing quarterbacks are perfectly healthy, perfectly fine, and so many pocket passers. Think about Kirk Cousins, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Aaron Rodgers. They're all sidelined. We got to get out of this notion that rushing quarterbacks present unusual injury risk. The injury data simply doesn't support it, which brings me to lesson number 3, which is that we are collectively terrible at predicting future injuries, okay? We are terrible at this. We convince ourselves that certain guys are injury prone when in fact it is the game itself that is injury prone. If you fade players because you think you can see an injury in their future, you're probably making a huge mistake. The 2 best answers in fantasy this season, guys who carried you to your league's championship round, are Christian McCaffrey and Raheem Mostert. And I can guarantee that thousands, tens of thousands of fantasy managers avoided them at ADP as injury red flags, right? Tua Tagovailoa terrified people. He's in the MVP conversation. Matthew Stafford also terrified people. Lamar Jackson, we can go on. These guys were all healthy entering the year, and we dodged them because of bad vibes, right? Looking back, it is insane. If you want to react to an actual injury on draft day, that's fine. But do not talk yourself into avoiding healthy, talented players in great situations.
All right, that's great work by Andy Behrens. Spectacular lessons were learned. I feel smarter right now. That was beautifully done by you. Also, whoever did the graphics behind the scenes, chef's kit. Like the right? Graphic with the tight end. Oh, that was spectacular. Oh, the clock's already running. It's hurry up offense time. D says pick 3: Ken Walker, Jonathan Taylor, Breece Hall, Travis Etienne. Harmon, what do you think?
Well, obviously Breece Hall is the easy answer. We know he's going to smash, definitely. I'm pretty spooked by Travis Etienne, so he will be the guy I am benching in this scenario.
Oh, I like that. Okay, look at that. Still got it in with the clock, even though I rambled. Jay Rizzi says, I can't believe I'm asking this, but it's come to that point. Mahomes or Flacco? We all know Flacco's been red hot, and Mahomes has been average at best. Help! Andy Behrens, help him.
Yeah, it's wild that this even feels like a real question, right? Like we would have mocked this a few weeks ago, but not now. It's still Patrick Mahomes. He's still Mahomes. He's still got Kelsey and Rice. He's playing the Bengals too, so the matchup is great. It's got to be Mahomes.
All right, let's get the next one in from Leanna St. Martin, who says, help! I have Diggs. He's been a bust. I can pick up DeMarcus Robinson, Addison, Osborne, Noah Brown, or Shaheed. Do I trust Diggs or move on to someone else? Harmon, what say you?
Listen, I know it has been super frustrating with Stephon Diggs, somebody that has a bunch of Stephon Diggs. I get it, but he's still number one in terms of first free targets last week. He smashed the Patriots of late. Don't go this deep to the waiver wire to replace him.
Oh, still in, like, absolute professional move.
I'm a pro.
There's no doubt. Brian Katz comes in and says, Tua or Kyler in one QB. Andy Behrens?
Oh man, I can actually talk myself into Kyler here. Now, the key thing is he's been ill, right? Like half the league is sidelined with illnesses right now. So as long as he plays, he gets Philadelphia. That matchup is so good. They've been such a user-friendly defense. So I'm leaning Kyler as long as he plays.
All right, we'll get the next one in coming from Kevin Gibson. Kevin wants to pose this point. Oh, sorry. It's Veg coming in saying, half PPR, start Amari Cooper or hold for either Pacheco, CEH, whoever starts. Matt Harmon, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I think you could make a very good argument that you could start Amari Cooper, but you can't because he's inactive, so you got to start Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
See, that's a great job of you by taking us back to our opening of the show, as Amari Cooper is inactive for tonight's game. So make sure you get out there and get him out of this thing. Also, just a reminder that I'm Anchorman. You put in front of me San Diego. I'm sorry. All right, Kevin comes up next. Kevin says, start Bears or Raider DST. Up yours, Kevin. No. Andy, it's fine. What do you think on this one?
Yeah, I'm gonna recommend that you do the thing that Fitz should have done a couple weeks ago and play the Raiders defense, right? That seems like the right move. They get Gardner Minshew.
29 points sitting on my bench. 29 points. Oh, my God. I
really
lost
considered
3.
a lot.
My season ended by 3. Andre, oof, I'm feeling it. Terry McLaurin, Devontae Adams, or KJ Osborne. Harmon, what do you got?
See, this is what I'm talking about. Add a little personality to these questions. Let's have a little bit of a dialogue, not just like a hello, fantasy robot, answer question for me now. I think you go back to Devontae Adams. Like, I know that's crazy, but you just look at Aiden O'Connell's completions. That 9 was an outlier. Huge disappointment. Chase the floor with Adams.
We are about to test the strength of Andy Barron's relationship. Doug Sly says, Kittle versus Laporta. 0 for the last 8 starting the right guy. What you gonna do?
Oh man, I can't really go wrong here. This is like picking between two of my children. I'm sitting here in a George Kittle shirt. I've worn Sam Laporta shirts in previous weeks. I'm gonna go Kittle this time. He's got Washington. Incredible matchup.
Okay. We will next go to Matt Harmon, who gets Jay's question. Half point PPR. Hubbard versus Jax. Connor versus Philly. Nico versus Tennessee. What you got?
Yeah, I think that's your like real boring floor play, right, with Chuba Hubbard, although Jacksonville's run defense has been very good. So, listen, Jay, it's week 17. You got the American flag. You got the NASCAR thing going on. You're a guy who likes to have fun. You're a guy who clearly loves a little bit of adventure. Nico Collins is the fun answer. He's the upside play. We talked about the matchup earlier. Great spot against Tennessee.
We'll call that. He got it in. Chief Brody says, Jordan Love, Matthew Stafford, and Flacco. Who should I start? I'm thinking Stafford since I have Puka. Andy?
Yeah, whether you got Puka or not, this is Matthew Stafford. Again, last 5 games, 2 of those against great defenses against Cleveland and Baltimore. Last 5 games, he's got 14 touchdown passes, only 1 interception. He's playing great. I think he's top 6, top 8 this week. You got to play him here.
All right, the next question comes from Richie, and I've talked to Richie here. This is the question. Had Burrow injured, replaced with Howell, benched, picked up Wilson, also now benched. So I'm down to Carr, Flacco, Minshew, Browning, etc. in the final. Richie doesn't ask an actual question, but Harmon, what do you think?
I mean, the question is implied, Fitz. See, Richie and we are having a conversation here. I don't know if I can go with Carr. I'll stick with Flacco on this one, I guess.
All right. Still think you needed a question at the end. JJ Finesser, flexing in the picture, says PPR flex, appropriate. Deontay, Drake London, or Singletary. Andy Behrens, what do you think?
Yeah, man, Singletary just had 170 yards against Tennessee, this week's opponent, right? So we've just seen him detonate against this team. I got to go that route. I like Drake London. I don't think you have bad options here, but for me, this is definitely going to be Singletary.
Okay, let's see what we got next. You guys are doing well. Okay, what am I supposed to name of this? Vorblockeraptor? Vorplacria. Yeah. Jones, Chandler, or Mostert.
Velociraptor. Come on, man. Like, don't you know dinosaurs?
Is that a real dinosaur? Forget the clock on this. I need to know if a Vorplaciraptor is a real.
Just in case we don't get this in, the answer is Raheem Mostert, the touchdown leader. It is Raheem Mostert, but it's Velociraptor.
Is it? And also, does that dinosaur typically ride a bike? Since you're all knowing on the dinosaur world here, Armin, like it's a dinosaur on a bike. Yeah. Okay, this is what's happening now.
Read a history book, bro.
They turn them into movies, right? Just go see it. Need 2 for flex spots. Have PPR. Aaron Jones, Breece Hall, James Conner, Jaden Reed, Andy Behrens. No dinosaurs involved. What do you think?
Well, in keeping with the spirit of the show, I got to recommend Breece Hall here. I'm Team Harmon on this one. I'm pulling for you, buddy, and I'm going to give whatever positive energy I can to Breece Hall here. It's going to be him. It's also going to be Aaron Jones in a friendly matchup.
Okay. The whistle means stop, Andy. I'm just, we've gone the whole year. The whistle, it's fine. It's fine. Brian Anderson going for back-to-back full PPR flex. Need 1. Ridley, Zeke, Chuba. What do you think? Oh, Matt, sorry. I should have told you.
Yeah, I know. I know how the show works. Don't worry. I think if Trevor Lawrence, there's a Freudian slip. If Trevor Lawrence plays, we're going with Ridley, but I think Zeke is the disgusting floor answer here. Let's go there.
All right, so as we finish, and don't worry, we still have advice for you everywhere, but as we finish, let's get some quick final thoughts. This has been a great season. We've been able to be with you, but as Andy Behrens said, learn from mistakes. When I say 2023 fantasy football season, Andy Behrens, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
First of all, the show has been wonderful this year. Fitz, you've been a great addition. Shout out to everybody behind the scenes here. Shout out to Dan Harris. This has been an excellent season. I think the thing that leaps to mind is we had that weird Josh Dobbs binge. We've now had the weird Joe Flacco binge. I mean, this is why we play this game. This is why we're so engaged. The craziest things happen in the NFL. This has been a wild ride.
Matt Harmon, first thing that comes to your mind?
Yeah, I echo everything Andy said. Number one, Fitz, you've been a great addition to the show. It felt like, we'd been doing this show for years from the moment we started. It was pretty crazy, pretty uncanny there. And yeah, everybody behind the scenes, Dan Harris, Nicole for stepping in at the end here, Ron who left us, everybody else, you've been fantastic. So shout out. It was such a fun season. Really can't even just say enough about it. But from an on-field perspective, I always say that the number one theme in the NFL, the one thing that never changes in football, is chaos. And I feel like this season really, really, really emphasized that to us. And the thing I would just say for fantasy managers out there, I always say with running backs, right? You want to stack those backup running backs at the end of the year. You want to lean into that chaos of injuries at the position. That has definitely been the case this year. Zeke winning people championships. Your boy Zamir White out there. Ty Chandler winning people championships. But my God, the quarterback chaos this year. If you can just find ways to lean in, like Scott Pianowski always says, skate where the puck is going, not where it has been. Skate with that chaos, baby. Dance with the fire. I think you'll make yourself a better player in all the years to come.
I think as I look back on this year, from a fantasy standpoint, it's always going to be about how chaotic and lottery-like it was. Like some years, you can have the best lineup and it means something. This year, it felt like just if you had the right guy in at the right time. We experienced it on this show when I had DJ Moore on. It's the only reason I got any sort of a winning streak going, right? Like this was the year of that. It was the 50-point, how in the hell did that happen year? That's what makes it fun. That's what makes it wild. And that's why I would just implore anybody that hasn't necessarily played as much fantasy. I know that's not always our audience, but like this is the joy of it, because no matter how much research you do, no matter how much time you spend, no matter how much you listen to, this year it reminded you that we're all humbled by actual athletes going out and doing actually great things that is wildly unpredictable. It's what I loved about this. And as far as the show, I have to take a second and thank the two of you. It's always hard to come into a show that people have already had and make it feel natural. You guys welcome me like family from the outset. You've mentioned Dan Harris. I will mention him again. I couldn't have done this year without his work every single week. What people don't see is how much work people behind the scenes have put into making the show happen. It is an honor truly for us to get to hang out with you guys every week, and it means the world. We get to do what we do for a living because you choose to listen, you choose to click, you choose to read. You've changed all of our lives, and we're deeply deeply thankful for that. We will be doing this throughout the course of all time. Like, it's not going anywhere. It's just this season is coming to an end for Fantasy Football Live. Check back in all weekend, though. We're still covered. Latest on player news. Scott Pianowski will be answering your last-minute lineup questions on social media. Hashtag AskFFL Sunday morning. You know the drill. And keep up with all the offseason on the Yahoo Fantasy Football Forecast and Zero Blitz podcast. We are going to continue to give you the best coverage you can get anywhere. It's not going anywhere just because the season is. In the meantime, good luck on your championships. Happy New Year. And one more time, I will say on behalf of everybody that's part of this show, Matt Harmon, Andy Behrens, myself, we are all truly thankful for the time you've given us. Thank you for making our lives so incredible in 2023. We can't wait to do it again in 2024.